Hello, everyone, and welcome to this UCL private housing webinar. We will be kicking off in a few minutes, and we'll just kind of wait for everybody to join us. But before we do kick off, just want to say thank you for joining us today. My name is Carney, and I'm a Res Life Manager in UCL Accommodation. My main role is kind of trying to, as much as possible, improve the student experience and to ensure that you have the best possible time with us. This includes also supporting you as you look at making those next steps outside of UCL accommodation. Today, you'll be hearing not just from me, but also we have Farhat from the University of London Private Housing Service and Tim from your Students' Union, who are asked to introduce themselves now. Farhat, would you like to say hello?
Everyone, as Kylie said, my name is Farhat. I'm a housing advisor at the University of London Housing Service.
And perfect, Tim.
Hi, yes, I'm Tim. I'm the Advice Service Manager at your Students' Union. I'll tell you a bit more about what that means, obviously, later in the webinar.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we do have some slides to run through, but please don't worry about having to note down everything, remember all this information. Everything will be recorded. At the end of the PowerPoint, there will be some links and some QR codes for you to scan. And then also we'll be able to answer your questions at the end as well. Please know that we won't be able to kind of delve into specific cases or any really specific questions regarding your circumstances. But as I mentioned, at the end of the presentation, there'll be links to the relevant different services where you might be able to kind of get that more support. Perfect. So today you're going to hear from the University of London about what you need to know, how they support you, and also their private housing guide, followed by Tim kind of giving you an overview about what your Students' Union and UCL can also provide. Then you'll hear from me again about our brand new development in Canary Wharf, our urbanest development, which for the very first time allows returning students to secure a place in UCL accommodation. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be taking a moment to try answer your questions as best we can. So, without further ado, I'll now hand over to Farah.
Everyone, again, so yeah, today I'm going to take you through quite a quick, brief summary about finding private accommodation. It is just a brief overview. We do have a longer version of this that's available on our YouTube channel, as well as another webinar that will be that I can tell you about that will be that is scheduled for later on. If you don't mind moving to the next slide. Thank you. So I'll just briefly run through what we actually do as a service and how we can help you. So firstly, we can help you find accommodation, and this is through our property platform that I'll run you through in a couple of slides. We can also help you find flatmates through our Flatmate Finder events and our Flatmate Finder Facebook page. We can also help check your contract. If you find a place that you like, we can check it, make sure that it is a standard type of contract, or let you know about any concerns we have or any red flags we can point out to you. And lastly, we also provide housing advice. So once you've moved into a property, if you're having any issues with your landlord or agent, we can help you through that process as well. We also hold events throughout the year. So our biggest event is Housing Week. That is the 2nd to the 6th of March, which is coming up in a few weeks. The biggest event during that week is the annual housing fair. So that will be on the Thursday, on the 5th of March. This is a really great event if you're looking for housing for next year. It will be a room full of all the property providers that you can speak to. There'll be letting agents, landlords, and private halls as well. And you can get to know what would be the best option for you, what is available for next year, and what's within your budget. It's also just a really fun day. There's loads of freebies and activities and everything, and it's a great chance to meet other students that are looking to rent in London. So please do come along to that on the 5th of March. You just have to bring your ID with you. You don't have to register, and it is a free event. We also have our Flatmate Finder event on the 3rd of March, which is the Tuesday of that week. It's a really great afternoon that you can just meet other students in London from different universities, who are looking for flatmates to live with as well. We've got some activities and also a free drink as well at the end. So do come to that. You do have to register for that event through our website, but it is free to attend as well. So do come along to those. And we hold webinars throughout the year, particularly during Housing Week as well. We have webinars scheduled most of the days during that week, and there'll be specifically about looking for accommodation, which will be a more in-depth version of this one. There's a webinar on scams, on deposits, and also the new Renters' Rights Act that's coming out. So do join those. All the information about these events are on our website. So have a look and come along. Sorry, yeah, thank you. So just quickly about your first thoughts when looking for accommodation. You need to think about what type of accommodation would suit you. And the biggest thing is your budget. What can you afford? And with that, the location. Different areas of London have different rental prices. We have a really helpful average rent map on our housing guide, which you can find on our website, that tells you the different average rent in different areas of London. So when you have a budget in mind, do look at location to see what fits within that. And lastly, would you prefer to live with flatmates, or would you prefer to live by yourself? That's a really big point as well. So next slide, thank you. And with what options that you have available, the most common is flats and houses, but there are also private halls. So these are halls that are run by private companies, and also a resident landlord. So this is where you share a room. So you rent a room in a house and you share it with your landlord. So those are the most common options that are available. And the next slide, please. So. Thank you. So we do find that the most preferred option for students are shared flats and houses. So you're looking at about 3 to 5 students on average living together. The reason why it's the most preferred option is because it's cost effective, but you will have joint liability, which means you're essentially seen as one person together. And so you will have to rely on each other to pay rent and live there for the full period, so that you can effectively get each other in trouble if you don't. So it is really core to make sure you have a good group of people when you're renting, and know that they can afford the place as well with you. So next slide, thank you. I also briefly mentioned about our property platform earlier. So you can find this on our website. It's free to register and use. You can look for loads of different properties that we have available and filter it to your search. And the landlords and letting agents that do advertise with us sign up to a code of good practice. So just gives you that bit of reassurance. And yeah, it's a really great place to start your search. Even if you don't find something on there, it's a great place to start your search and see what's available and what kind of rent prices are there. So we really encourage you to register and start your search there. I also briefly mentioned our Flatmate Finder Facebook group. So you can register for this on Facebook, and loads of students post rooms that they have available in their flat share, or if they're looking for other students to live with as well. So if you register for that, you can meet other students and kind of network through that as well and find properties that's available. There are other places to look. We're not affiliated with any of these websites, but they are commonly used. So Spare Rooms is good to look at individual rooms, and there's Rightmove and Zoopla and Open Rent for whole properties. And then lastly, there is Facebook and Gumtree. Just be careful with Facebook and Gumtree. It is unregulated, so you'll find that there's quite a lot of scams on there. Not to say don't use it, but kind of use it as a last resort, and just be really vigilant. And please book contract checks with us if you do find anything on any of these websites, just so we can let you know if there's anything to be concerned about. With that, just a reminder to be cautious. It's really unfortunate, but there are rental scams out there. And often they target students because they know that it will be your first experience with renting. So just be vigilant with everything, question everything if you're feeling worried about it. And just come to us. If you're in doubt, just ask us to give you a bit of clarity if that something is common or if it's not. Key points to note is please don't use any money transfer services like Western Union or MoneyGram because you can't trace who that money has gone to. And lastly, please don't pay anything before you've actually seen the property. You want to make sure that it actually exists before you pay any money for it. Mentioned also briefly about budgeting. So with budgets, don't forget costs that go beyond your rent. So you need to factor in your bills, travel, uni expenses, food and leisure, any other kind of expenses you have. Take those into account before you choose what your budget could be for rent. Make sure you can afford it for the full term, and as well as if you're sharing with other students, make sure you all can afford it for the full term, so that you once you sign it, you are liable for that rent. So just make sure you can afford it. And again, just a reminder, location does make a difference. And this is just a screenshot from our housing guide. It does actually have the amounts on our website through a key. So have a look at the housing guide on what areas is within your budget. When you find a property you like, please do go to see it in person. With COVID, there has been a rise of virtual viewings, but it is harder to see problems through that way. So nothing kind of beats actually going to the property in person. But if you can't avoid it, um, do a live viewing. So do a FaceTime or a video call of it rather than relying on anything pre-recorded or taken, because you don't know when those pictures were taken and it could be for an entirely different property. So make sure anything you do is live, and just have any questions that you need clarified from them ready before you go, and anything they promise you, make sure to get in writing after your viewing. These are just some things to look out for when you do go to reviewing. Make sure there's a smoke alarm, check if there's damp or mold patches, any kind of infestation signs, any electrical hazards, and please don't be afraid to ask questions. If you find that you're not sure of what something is, just ask them. We do know that it can be difficult to deal with agents because they are, working for the landlord. It can be hard to work with them. A couple of points to note with agents' requirements: they do have to belong to what's called a redress scheme. So there's only two redress schemes in the UK. There's property redress scheme and the property ombudsman. They do have to be a member of one of these, not both, and they also have to have client money protection, which you can find on their website or in their office. They should have their certificates displayed. But if you book a contract check with us, we can do those checks for you and make sure that agent that you're dealing with is compliant. You might have heard of the Tenant Fees Act that came out in 2019, which banned a lot of fees that were commonly charged before. They basically used to charge you for everything and anything they could, like contract fees, admin fees, reference fees, any kind of fees. They'll charge you for it. They can't do that anymore. There's only a certain list of fees they can charge you. So if they are charging you fees that are not on the list that I'm going to mention to you, you can refuse to pay that and say that you're not required to pay that fee due to this law. So which of the fees still apply? So basically, these are the only fees. If you lose your key, you can be charged for cutting a new key. If you'd like to swap tenants, so also called an assignment, where you find a replacement tenant to swap you out if they've given you permission to, they can charge you for that, but only £50. If you want to end the contract sooner than your contract allows you to, they can charge you for that as well, but it has to be reasonable. And lastly, if you pay your rent late, they can charge you 3% above the Bank of England base rate. It was 4.5% when we last did this, but I think it has reduced to 3.75% now. But yeah, if the fee wasn't on that page, you don't have to pay it. There's also deposits that you will have to pay, so these are permitted payments as well. The first one will be a holding deposit. If you find a property you like, you pay this deposit to reserve it for you, and so that they don't advertise it to anyone else. The maximum they can charge you is 1 week for that. So if they're charging you more, please don't pay more than 1 week. You will only get this back if the landlord changes their mind about renting the property to you, not if you do. So if you pay a holding deposit, but you're still looking for other properties and you find one that you prefer, it's likely you'd lose your deposit in that circumstance if you decide not to go ahead with the one that you've paid for. If you do go ahead with it, they should deduct that money from other money you owe, like rent or your security deposit. It shouldn't be extra money that you pay. And before you pay it, make sure you make your offer clear in writing regarding the rent that you've agreed to pay and anything that you've asked them to do before you pay, so that you're all confirmed with what's the arrangement before you pay any money to them. Thank you. There are additional requirements as well. For example, right to rent. Before they release the keys to you, they'll have to check that you have a right to rent in the UK. So don't be concerned about that. Reference checks, they might check your financial checks to see that credit checks to see that you pay your loans on time, etc. And any kind of character references they can get from you in case from your previous landlords or your education service, etc., just to see that you're a good tenant. You may be asked to have a guarantor. So this is somebody that signs on the contract with you who can be held accountable if you don't pay your rent. There are companies that can do that for you as well for a small fee. So do have a look on our website. We do have recommendations as well. We're not affiliated, but there are some recommendations we've made with Helping Hand and Rent Guarantee, etc. That you can pay a small fee to be your guarantor for you. They could ask you for rent in advance. So commonly we find agents ask for 6 months advance, etc. This is subject to change, which I will tell you a bit about later on. But for now, as the rule stands, they can ask you for rent in advance. And lastly, they may ask you to pay a damage deposit as well. So I'll speak more in depth of that in the next slides. When you get your contract, just make sure you are reading it. Check what type of contract you've received, if it's the correct one. Check if there's a break clause, if you can end your contract early. Anything they've promised you, make sure it's in the contract or in writing somewhere to say that they've promised you that. So if they said that they're going to paint the whole house or they're going to repair something that you saw was broken during your viewing, make sure it's in black and white in writing so that you can actually refer to it as evidence of something they've not fulfilled if they don't. And please just read the contract, make sure you understand everything, what your rights are, what your obligations are, or seek advice from us. We'd always recommend that you get a contract check from us, even if you rented before. It's just helpful for another set of eyes to look at it, make sure that everything's standard, there's nothing concerning, or ways that we can actually tweak the contract to make it more beneficial for you or in your favor. Thank you. I mentioned about damage deposits as well, so that's another payment that they are permitted to charge you. So these are another word for it is a security deposit. So it's money that they take as security against any damage that you may have caused to the property whilst you're living there. It's paid at around the time you sign the contract, and it should be held in a deposit protection scheme in most cases. The only time that you won't is if you're in a license agreement or if you're living with your landlord, so you're in a lodgers agreement. And this deposit should be returned to you at the end of your tenancy as long as you haven't caused any damage and you don't have any rent outstanding or any bills that you haven't paid. So I mentioned about deposit protection in the previous slide. So if you do have a standard contract with your landlord, they have to protect it in one of these 3 schemes. So only one of them, not all. You can check if your landlord protected it through these websites. They have to protect it within 30 days of receiving that money from you and provide you with what's called prescribed information. If they don't do that within the deadline, you are entitled to compensation. So let us know if that happens and we can talk you through your options. Just to briefly touch on the reason for the scheme, it's to help you if your landlord wants to take money from your deposit. You can raise a dispute with the scheme if you don't agree, and they'll kind of adjudicate that process and make sure that the landlord's only getting your deposit if they can prove that you have caused damage. Thank you. And then just briefly about setting up your home, just make sure you read the meters when you move in so you're not charged for anything a previous tenant used, and setting up your utility accounts. If you're a full-time student, you will be exempt from council tax, but you have to apply for this. It won't be automatic. And make sure you take pictures when you move in to keep a record of what it looked like from the moving in day and also on your moving out day. So you've got good evidence if that deposit dispute ever happens. And any problems, any repairs that are needed, make sure you report it straight away, so it doesn't get worse and you're not accused for them, and just take pictures and keep record of everything just in case. In some cases, you may want to leave your contract earlier than you have agreed in your fixed term. You may be able to do that if your landlord gives you permission, but they can charge you, as mentioned before, or if you have a valid break clause. But this is subject to change with the Renters' Rights Act, which I'll explain in the next few slides. If neither of those apply, like right now, as the current rule stands, those are the only two options that you can leave your contract or to assign your tenancy, so you find a replacement. But if neither of those apply, you will be liable for your rent until the end of the term. So that gets me onto the Renters' Rights Act. It is going to be really brief, just because of the time restrictions, but we do, as I say, have an in-depth presentation for you during Housing Week. So please do join that, because there's going to be a lot of changes to a lot of the things that I've already said and how it currently operates. But effectively, the law passed last year, but it's not enforced until the 1st of May. So the current rules stand until the 1st of May. But the changes will be retrospective. So even if you sign a contract today or you've already signed one, as soon as the 1st of May hits, it will apply to your contract. But different tenants will be affected in different ways depending on who they rent from, like if it's from a PBSA, a private hall, or resident landlord, etc. So please do join our webinar on Friday, the 6th of March. It's at 1 p.m. Just to get more details about that. And we do have really helpful guidance already on our website. So have a look at those to see what the key changes are. But I'll just briefly run through some of them for you now. Sorry, so one big change is that there's not going to be any more assured short haul tenancies. So this relates to fixed term tenancies. So no more 6 months or 12 months tenancies. Everything will be rolling. So a contract exists as long as you continue to pay your rent until one of you decides to terminate that contract, meaning either the tenant or the landlord. So a contract would just go on indefinitely until either party serves notice to terminate. With the notice, you may have heard of Section 21 notices, also called no-fault evictions. So these are evictions where the landlord, if there's a break clause in your fixed term contract, or if your fixed term has ended, the landlord can serve you 2 months notice just to ask you to leave, and they don't have to have a reason for that. That's why it's called a no-fault eviction. These are being scrapped. So a landlord cannot evict you unless they have a valid legal reason. So there's specified grounds in law, and only those reasons will apply as to why a landlord can evict you from them. The grounds are expanding, but they will be specific, and without that, those grounds a landlord can't. However, a tenant can serve 2 months notice at any time after the 1st of May to end your contract, as long as you give 2 months notice, and it has to be in writing and expire at the end of a rental period. So for example, if you pay your rent on the 1st of every month, your notice period has to end on the 31st or the 30th of the previous month. So that you know your new rent, you don't have to pay next month's rent. This will only apply after the 1st of May, but even if you sign a contract today, that change will happen to you if you're in a normal assured short haul tenancy. So at any time you can serve that notice. And then the next slide, please. Landlords also can't charge you for rent in advance anymore after the 1st of May. So right now they still can, but after, they won't be able to ask you for rent in advance, and they can't put that in the contract. You can voluntarily pay rent in advance after the tenancy has already started, but they can't ask you to do that. So it's more likely that you will be required to have a guarantor, and you may have to use those guarantee services that I mentioned to you before. I also mentioned that new grounds are coming in for eviction. So one notable one is ground 4A. So this will be introduced for student lettings so that landlords can evict students at the end of an academic year, but it will only apply in some circumstances, and the landlord has to fulfill some criteria. It's quite a lot of information to get into depth with, but please do join that webinar on the 6th of March for more information on that. And also student halls will not be affected. So anyone living in university halls won't be affected by the changes, as you will be in a license agreement. And private halls are exempt. But again, this depends on various matters, which I don't have time to get into today, but please join that webinar. And then, yeah, just the next slide, please. So again, that webinar is really key. It will give you all that information and a bit more detail. But right now, we do have a Renters' Right Act guide on our website. You can find that pretty easily on our website if you just go into the Get Advice section. Then just hit the Renters' Rights Bill Frequently Asked Questions tab. It answers a lot of questions and just gives you more information about things that I've mentioned. And again, just a reminder that the changes are not enforced until the 1st of May. So right now, if you sign a contract, the current rules will apply until the 1st of May. Sorry, next slide. Thank you. And I mentioned, no, sorry, back to the other one. Thank you. So I mentioned about our housing guide. Really, really useful information on there. It's got all and every information that you could imagine about renting. Please do browse that. Have a look at our average rent price map. There's also some sample housing budgets and average cost of bills and utilities to help you budget as well. So it is really, really helpful. And then where can you get advice? Obviously, you can get advice from us. We're available Monday to Fridays. You can book appointments with us to check your contract or discuss your housing issues. Or if you just have a general housing question, just drop us an email and we'll be able to help you with that. Your college's student services team are on hand as well. And then there's external bodies that can help you, like Shelter and Citizens Advice. Shelter is more guided towards housing, and Citizens Advice is generally about everything. But they also have really helpful guides on their website and also a helpline that you can contact if you ever need. And lastly, these are our contact details, which you can find on our website as well. And I'm sure your student services team might be able to share those with you. And you can find us at the Registry and Advice Centre at Senate House. So it's just a short walk from the Bloomsbury campus, really not far at all. And we are in the office on Monday, Wednesdays and Thursdays. And also follow us on socials. We're on all types of socials, so follow us there. We do give loads of tips on there as well. And we also promote our upcoming events, so you'll be able to hear about what we've got coming up. And again, just to say, please do come to our housing fair on the 5th of March and our flatmate finder and join those webinars during Housing Week. They're really, really invaluable, especially if you're looking for accommodation right now. Thank you. Sorry, and also just before I pass over, I know this was really, really quick and it was brief, and I didn't delve into all the details of anything as much. So please do look at our resources that we have. We have a YouTube channel that actually has this presentation in depth already, but again, we are holding this webinar again during Housing Week. So if you want more details about everything I've discussed today, please join that. Thank you. And I think I'll pass on to Tim now.
Lovely, thank you. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name's Tim. I'm from the advice service in the Students' Union, your Students' Union. So rather than going through the kind of process and tips to find housing, I'm just here really to highlight what the Students' Union can offer you to complement what University of London Housing Services can offer when you're looking for accommodation or if you experience any issues during your time there. Next slide, please. So you might be aware of some of the other things that the Students' Union does already. So, for example, like on campus, you might see our cafes, our shops, the gym. You might be a member of clubs and societies. But also, perhaps a little bit less well known is that we do have the advice service. So it is fairly well used. So we had over 2,000 of you contacted us for advice in last academic year. And I just want to note that we can help with housing issues. So finding housing and also things that might crop up whilst you're there. But we do also help with some other things as well. Because we are your students' union, we can help with things, for example, in the list that I've put here. So academic issues, for example, if you were looking to put an extenuating circumstances request in, or you're going through another procedure at UCL, we can help with that. Or if you're having issues with money, or with a job that you have, a part-time job, and you want some advice around that, we can also help. We're free, we're confidential, we're independent from the university. So what that means is if you're having a concern that involves the university, you can speak to somebody that's independent, essentially. And we are available in a number of different ways. So we're easy to contact, basically. So on the topic of housing, I've just put some examples of some of the things that we can help you with. These are some of the kind of common things that you come to ask for help with. There are others as well. So we do help with finding accommodation. We give information and advice around that. I would say, though, as Farhat pointed out, University of London Housing Services have that fantastic platform, the property platform, to look on. So that's a great place to look. But for example, either where you're looking for accommodation, or once you're actually in the accommodation, we help with things like you're trying to avoid scams, what to look out for if you're a bit unsure about something, if you are worried about the landlord not getting things fixed, if you want someone to look over your contract, getting your deposit back, obviously a big issue. All these things we can offer you that free advice on. We do also help. So something that thankfully doesn't crop up that much, but is something that we see. Students in very, very difficult positions, like experiencing homelessness. We help with trying to link up with emergency options, talk about what your rights are to stay in accommodation, link you up with specialist services at obviously what is an extremely distressing time. And just to note, if we're not the best people to help, we will try and link you up, direct you to other organisations. That might include University of London Housing Services, but there's other specialist external organisations, which obviously were mentioned before as well. I just wanted to touch as well on what we can offer kind of in the area of financial support. So obviously, housing issues, looking for housing, and money worries can be very closely linked together. So, perhaps you're not sure what you can afford to spend when you're looking for your accommodation for next year, or if you're already in accommodation, you're having some concerns about paying the rent. We have some specialist advisors who support with money and budgeting advice. So we, for example, can go through your budget, helping to try and maximize your income. If you're looking to make a hardship fund application to UCL, we can try and explain that and hopefully make sure that you're more likely to be successful in it. We have a specific email if you want to get that kind of advice. So I just wanted to highlight, because it's obviously a very connected thing. And then just to highlight, we have, as well as being able to get in contact with us, whether you can meet with us face to face or you get some email advice, we also have a lot of online resources. So this is just some examples of the kind of the more popular like guide-based pages, although we have information on all aspects of both finding housing and issues that can crop up whilst you're actually in that housing as well. The examples here, so our renters checklist is like a condensed kind of guide of the things to look out for when you are searching for housing, when you're viewing, when you're in that like initial stages, basically. We also have a step-by-step guide if your landlord isn't getting things fixed. That's what our housing repairs guide is about, obviously, a big concern. And also council tax. So obviously, a majority of full-time students should be exempt from that, but issues do crop up. The councils perhaps don't get things quite right, or there are kind of special circumstances. So if you're worried about that, we have a guide around basically checking if you'd have to pay that charge and what you can do if you think it's wrong. And we can offer like personalised advice on that as well. And then I just want to highlight another service, not advice, but another tool that you can use to help you in your search for housing. So I would say this can be used in addition to alongside the University of London Housing Services property platform and also their Flatmate Finder Facebook group. This part of our Students' Union website is specifically a place where UCL students can post adverts, so like yourself. So it could be that people are looking for other students to live with for next year. They want to get together and find somewhere together. You can also list if you've got a spare room in a house share that you're looking to fill. If your room, you're looking to leave it and you're looking for someone else to take over that responsibility, you can also use it for that. So it's just another resource to help you in your search for housing, basically. And then I just wanted to highlight this is where to go. So if you want to look at the online information that we've got on all these housing topics, if you want to contact us and find out a bit more about that, you would go to this link and basically you can use that if you want to request that advice from us, whether it's in email or if it's a meeting. We're very happy to do that. As I said, access that online advice and those helpful guides. The department that we're part of in the Students' Union has a number of other services as well. So, for example, like I said, if you need advice on more of an academic issue or it's around money that you're concerned about, and we also have some specialist programs as well that the department runs, you can find out about all that there. Obviously, this isn't the time to go into any detail about that. And then basically just wanted to give you a heads up. So if you want to contact us for advice, so whether this is about housing issues, money issues, other issues, we would say the best way to get in contact with us is to use our contact form, because it means we get all the information we need to help you as quickly and efficiently as possible. It only takes a few minutes to fill in. I've included a screenshot there. You can attach, for example, your tenancy agreement, any other useful information you think we need to help advise you. There are other ways to contact us. So if you've just got a general question about what we can help with, our email address is there, our phone number. We're in one of the Students' Union buildings at 25 Gordon Street on the first floor. We have a reception that's open Monday to Friday, so you can pop in and ask a question. But if you want that detailed advice, just going to direct you to that contact form, and then we can get back to you, as quickly as possible, basically. And then, just wanted to give you the QR code. So if that's helpful, just to be able to access our service, you can go directly to the landing page that I mentioned before, where you can find out all the online information, and also you can get to our contact form. And basically just thank you for listening. And we're here if you want advice, whether it's on a housing issue or other things that might crop up whilst you're a student here at UCL. And just good luck with your accommodation search. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim and Farha. As mentioned, we will come on to your questions shortly, but before we do so, I just want to take this opportunity to make you aware, if you're not already aware of, our brand new accommodation in Canary Wharf. We're working with a company called Urbanest, who already manage a few of our halls, to create a new, very large, high-spec building in Canary Wharf. The building itself is located in between UCL East and Bloomsbury, while also servicing the School of Management. It has all the features that you would expect of a brand new development, including 24/7 security, a cinema room, shared spaces such as shared kitchens, but also study rooms as well. The development itself is made up of 3 different towers. Tower 1 will be our kind of family tower, with also certain flats available for families, but also UCL's visiting staff as well. Whereas Tower 2 will be a combination of undergraduates and postgraduates, both on 51-week contracts. So undergraduates can secure a 51-week contract if they want. Whereas Tower 3 will be the undergraduate tower on 40-week contracts. What's great about this is it gives students, specifically returning students, more control over where they want to live next year. So in addition to all the kind of great information that's been shared already about what to do if you want to look for alternative private accommodation, this option is now available to all full-time UCL students. You can book now, secure now, and even pick who you want to live with. As I had just said, that you can now book through the UCL accommodation platform for this September 2026. For new students, the application process will be the same as the one that you went through earlier this year. And also an update as well that with the new Canary Wharf building, it allows us to increase the number of accessible and also adaptable bedrooms that we have as well for any students requiring any additional requirements. It also allows us to expand the number of affordable rooms that we have available for students undergoing financial hardship. The definition of affordability and the London affordable rooms is all managed by the London Mayor. So not UCL, is part of the Mayor of London scheme about affordable rooms. So Canary Wharf allows us to increase that number of affordable rooms for students in financial hardship. As you can see, more information is available on the screen. And again, please don't worry about writing this all down now or remembering now. This session is recorded and all the information is available online. And that's it. That's the formal part of the presentation. We'll leave the slides up for a few more minutes if you want to take any photos or scan the QR codes. What we will be doing is kind of come into your questions in the Q&A shortly. So if you haven't already, please pop your questions in the Q&A and we will try our best to answer it. Perfect. So we got a few questions in the Q&A already and we'll just work them through. So the first one is specifically about UCL accommodation. So I'll kind of tackle that one. When will UCL open the accommodation applications for a second-year student who requires additional medical requirements? So the application portal for the next academic year will open at some point in March. If you are a student who has medical requirements, which will then allow you to carry on living in UCL accommodation, you can make an application through that and submit any required evidence. Depending on the situation, it might be judged by a panel reviewing that, and then they'll get back in touch with you regarding any other questions or outcomes. Perfect. So this is a great question, and maybe more so for you, Farha. When do you think is the best time to start looking for accommodation and also then confirming the accommodation, signing the contract and whatnot?
Yeah, so if London is a really fast-paced rental market, so you don't have to do that too soon, because you'll find that the start date of some of these will be quite fairly after they've been advertised. So obviously try and coincide it with when you actually need to be in London, so you're not paying for rent before you're even going to need to live there. What really marks a great time to start is Housing Week. That usually marks the start of the house hunting process for us. It has become a lot earlier than it used to. It used to be in May, and due to demand, it has become earlier in March now. You find a lot of PBSA, so the private halls advertise a lot sooner, but private renting from a landlord or an agent might be a month or a couple of months before you actually want to move in there. So those would be the best time. Obviously, only confirm a rental if it coincides with when you want to move in to the place. But they should have usually in adverts they have the start date of when they expect that when they want a tenant to move into that place. So make sure you have a look at that and it coincides with what you need as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we have another question as well, asking for information or guidance that we can share regarding storing your stuff over the summer. Great. Feel free to come in here, Tim or Farha, but from my perspective, UCL does not have any official partner who we recommend in terms of storage solutions. Previously, we have worked with companies like Lovespace, for example, but we don't have any recommended providers. That'll be kind of you doing your research, looking online, using sources like Reddit or reviews to try to see what experience other people have had with that storage provider and figuring out what's best to work for you. Really. Anyone else got anything to add about summer storage?
Yeah, that's the same as what you said. We don't have anyone that we kind of are affiliated with or could recommend to you. But yeah, just do your research on the storage company as Kylie says, and see what others are saying about it before you pay for anything.
Perfect. And then just a kind of question that I had as well is that when students are looking for accommodation, it be it with a private landlord or whatnot, what documents will they need to have when kind of going through that contract process? So it's my understanding that it's like your copy, your ID, passport, bank statements, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So, they want to check your bank statements to make sure that you have the money to pay for your rent or an income, and then your passport to do right to rent checks to check your ID and that you have the right to rent in the UK. Or if you're international, they'll ask you for your visa documentation or your share code, so that they can check that you have a right to rent in the UK as well. And then if you do have a guarantor, they might ask for your guarantor's bank statements as well to make sure they've got an income or savings that they can guarantee your rent with. So yeah, these are most common documents to renting a property.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we kind of got a question in the chat asking about is availability date different than rent starting dates? So from my perspective, the availability date is the date that the property is available from.
Yeah.
Your rent start date will be the date that you normally take ownership or you move into that property. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so on the advert it would say when the soonest date that is available from that property is available from. Once you actually liaise with the agent or the landlord, they'll tell you when your move-in date is and your rent becomes liable from the date that your contract starts. So for now it's advertising the earliest day that you can move in basically.
Perfect. And so we have another question as well. Can I apply to UCL accommodation in my second year if I wasn't given accommodation in my first year and instead lived in a UoL hall? Unfortunately, no, it doesn't necessarily work that way. So for priority and eligibility, it's generally first year undergrads or first year postgrads who are prioritized for places in UCL accommodation, irrespective of if they lived there the previous year, as long as they meet our kind of criteria. That's their first year of their course. If you are a returning student, so for example, going into your second year, the only option available would be to secure a room at our new urbanest development, which is specifically being marketed and aimed for returning students. So now kind of question for you, Tim. So from your perspective, is there any advice you can offer for students looking for a room for only part of the year? So for example, September to April only.
Yeah, so I think the Renters' Rights Act and the changes that are coming in with that will impact your ability to be able to find a room that's for that kind of time. So I think that because a lot of private halls are going to be exempted, and you should definitely check out the webinar and the guidance that was mentioned to find out more about that. Because those halls are going to be exempted, they will probably still offer you the year-long contract. But actually, if you are finding a shared house or your own flat, you're probably going to have a periodic tenancy, and actually whatever the a stated fixed term is or what it used to be is not going to apply. So you may be able to be more flexible and move in September 2026, but then actually give your correct notice, which obviously you should check that you're doing that right. You may be able to then leave in April 2027 because a fixed term won't really exist in the same way.
That's really interesting. And please feel free to come in, Farha, if I misunderstood. So kind of one of the main difference contractually between PBSA, which is basically purpose-built student accommodation. So these are companies like Unite, Fresh, Urbanest, Chapter, who specifically build buildings for student accommodation and rent them privately as the kind of contract. So if you wanted desperately to lock in a contract between September and April, a PBSA is able to offer you that. Whereas if you wanted to rent directly from a landlord, the contract works a wee bit differently and it's kind of rolling until at which point someone gives notice on wanting to end it. Is that a fair summary for her?
Yeah, that is fair. Although, yeah, as Tim was saying, it's more likely that PVSAs will have a fixed academic year contract because they are exempt from the notice that students can do to terminate. So it's more likely that if you actually enter into a contract with a private landlord, you'll be able to serve that notice whenever you like, so that you can move out whenever you want to in April. Whereas you might not have that flexibility if that accommodation provider is not offering shorter rental terms than the 52 weeks or the 12 months. So yeah, it's assessing that. As Tim said, it's something to negotiate with the PBSA, but usually they have structured term lengths that they offer. So if you want the flexibility of being able to leave whenever you would like to, given that you give 2 months notice, maybe a landlord or renting a property is more beneficial to you than a private accommodation, like a hall, basically.
No, that's really kind of interesting. Thank you. And I guess a kind of question for both of you who obviously spend a lot of time working with students. If we have a private landlord who you're living with and they do not fix things promptly or within reasonable timeframes after being informed about a problem, what can the student or tenant do in that situation? Farhad, do you want to kick off, and then Tim, you can add anything?
So there's two kind of faults to that. So if it's if you're living in a house that you're renting from a landlord and they're not living with you, then there are certain rules that they have to follow, and laws basically that they have to comply with to repair it within a reasonable time. Depending on what your issue is, if it's hazardous, you can escalate it to the council, for example. But if you book an appointment with us, we can help you through that process. And give you tips on how to negotiate with your landlord to get repairs done or escalate it to different bodies like the council, for example. For now, if you just wanted to find out a little bit more about it, you can look at a housing guide. It gives you some advice about how to deal with repairs that your landlord's not doing. On the other part of your question, you mentioned a landlord that they're living with. That one's slightly trickier. When you live with your landlord, your rights are more limited than if you were living not with your landlord. There's really limited laws around that. The landlord has to give you a house that's habitable, so it needs to be safe for you to live with. But because it is essentially their home, there's not really any laws that govern that. It's more a common law thing, and it's a case of just asking them, and if they don't, working out with them, unfortunately.
No, Tim, anything else to add there? If not, I got another question for you.
I would just emphasize that, there's guidance out there. There are steps that you can take. And one thing that can be helpful is accessing like a template letter. So, for example, Shelter, or an organization that Farhat mentioned, have these template letters, quite good because it kind of refers to what the law is, what your rights are. And that might just kind of kick them into action, if you like.
Good to know. And then a follow-up question for you, Tim. So if you are a PGCE student, so postgrad student who has a lot of placements, so they're split between university placements, how would you kind of advise them on where to kind of pick to live, if that makes sense? So London's a big city. Isn't there any advice we could kind of give students for kind of picking areas?
It's really, really difficult if you don't have those placements confirmed, because my advice would generally be, once you do have a bit more information about the area you could be based in for your placement, or the areas, you can then do that research. You can use the TfL journey planner, you can use like City Mapper, you can even test out these journeys and check that they're they're kind of suitable for you based on the placement and the university location. But if you don't know, it's really hard. I mean, maybe trying to go somewhere with the maximum most transport links you can get that get you to most places. And I think maybe thinking about where the placements are likely going to be, so at least you can try and make some plans, asking if they have any information about where people are usually placed. That might be, your department, your course, or anyone else who's done that course before. But it is really difficult. I won't lie.
There are some really useful insights. And I guess, like you kind of said, speaking to students in the years above, learning from their experiences, or kind of like if you don't know where you might be for placement, kind of ensuring that you're in an area with good transport links. This is becoming better year on year in London with more overground lines, the Elizabeth line, and so on and so forth. So as long as you're kind of near good transport links, it might kind of take away that stress and anxiety. So kind of question for you, Farhat. So this is slightly different. So this is a new student, so not in UCL at the moment. They're coming to study in September. So firstly, on-campus accommodation, so UCL accommodation, the applications open at some point in March. Keep an eye on our social media and the websites for more information about that. But the second part of the question is regarding private accommodation, I assume PBSAs, and ask them to pay rents before the 1st of August, which is a month or so prior to their arrival. Does the new regulations affect anything like that, or does it not, because the PBSAs are exempt from the Renters' Right Act?
Yeah, so it won't apply to PBSAs because they are exempt. So any rules around renters' rights, it just won't apply to a PBSA. There are criteria that the PBSA has to meet to be able to be exempt, but it's likely that most of the key ones that you see out there will be exempt from that. However, if you're renting from a landlord, then they can't ask you to pay rent in advance, as long as you sign, as long as once the act comes in. So if you sign a contract now, and they ask you for your rent in advance, then they can ask for that. But if it's after the 1st of May, then they can only ask you for the rent once your contract starts. They can't ask you for the rent before.
Good to know. I'm kind of staying with you for a second, Farhat, and then Tim coming on this afterwards. So Farhat, you mentioned a lot of your kind of housemate, flatmate finding events. Do you have any advice you might be able to share with about how to choose your housemates? What to kind of look for, what to try avoid, like any insight?
Yeah. It's obviously all personal preference. The key points are make sure the people that you live with can afford to rent the place that you're renting together, because you'll be jointly liable together for rent. So what that means is if one person doesn't pay their portion of it, that doesn't mean that the landlord just pursue that person. They can pursue all of you because you're all seen as one entity together. So the key point is about affordability. But other parts just for personal preference. I mean, everyone wants to live with their friends, but is your friend the best suit for a housemate? Just make sure. I mean, hopefully they won't get offended with you asking that questions, but maybe you don't like the way that they live, and maybe they're not the greatest partner for you to share a home with. You want somebody that either really complements your personality and your living space, because essentially you want to come home to somewhere you feel safe, you feel comfortable, and is your kind of haven. That is the place that you're gonna come and study. If your friend's quite likes to party at night, but you're not, maybe they're not the best person to kind of live with. So people that really suit your personality is the best way. And we do in our flatmate finder events, we have loads of activities that kind of plays around with that, to see what kind of personality you have, and whether you'd want to live with somebody that kind of gets you out of your shell, or you'd rather somebody that likes quiet time like you, for example. So yeah, it's all personal preference, but an important thing is affordability.
So there's a lot to kind of digest now, right? So not only is it that kind of personal qualities, getting on, stuff like that, having stuff in common, but also then trying to ascertain, would this person can they actually afford to pay the rent? Are they reliable? Are they financially responsible? And then kind of imagining that if you could kind of see yourselves living together, stuff like that. So it's really tricky, but it's nice to know there's kind of ways to kind of facilitate that. So we do a couple quick questions, and then it's just one I want to end on with both of you. So firstly, it's like, please repeat what housing options there were for second years or returning students. So as we kind of mentioned, within UCL accommodation, the only option really is urbanest Canary Wharf. Other options are renting through a PBSA or renting through a private landlord. That's the kind of main summary. For returning students submitting medical documents in March for college accommodation, when's the likely timeline they'll receive a outcome? So we process applications as soon as they start coming in, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. It's really hard for us to give a specific update deadline as to when you might be able to hear back. So two quick questions, because I'm aware we're kind of running out of time. So firstly, Farha, if you can, and Tim, if you could just kind of share any really short red flags to watch out for with a landlord. And then secondly, you both kind of mentioned your in-person kind of services. What does that actually look like? So if I want to come and speak to someone from University of London Housing Services or someone from SU Advice, I rock up at Senate House or a building or Jordan Street, and then kind of what happens, if that makes sense. So Farha, so any red flags, and then what do your in-person sessions actually look like?
Yeah, so with the red flags, key ones are if somebody's trying to ask you for money before you've even seen the place, that's a red flag. If they're asking you to pay fees that you're not supposed to pay, if they're trying to charge you for a viewing, those are quite key red flags. There are other technical red flags, and we really advise you to do a contract check with us so we can point those out to you, such as, do they own the property? We can check that for you. Checking also bank details, the bank details of the person you're paying money to. Does that match the person you're speaking to, or the agent company as well? So you want to make sure the person you're sending any money to matches who you're in communication with. So those are the kind of key red flags. We do have a scams talk during Housing Week. Please join that. It will talk you through all the kind of red flags to look out for. And we do have resources on our website as well, on a housing guide that talks you through kind of things to look out for, things to be cautious of. But those will be the main ones that spring to mind. Maybe Tim can think of others. But in terms of our service, in-person service, you would have to book an appointment. If you rock up at Senate House, it's unlikely that an advisor will be there ready to be able to advise you at that time. But if you call ahead or email ahead and book an appointment, we have appointments that are available Monday to Friday. You can come into the office to book an appointment if you're passing Bloomsbury, to ask our reception when the next available appointment is, and they can book you in on the spot. We do offer in-person appointments on Mondays, Wednesdays and Thursdays, but all throughout the week we do telephone calls, Teams calls as well.
Perfect. And then Tim, any red flags, and just give us some insight to what your kind of in-person sessions look like.
Sure. Yeah, I think that was really comprehensive. All I thought about with red flags is just if there's anything in the contract that sort of contradicts what the law says. So, for example, with the Renters' Rights Act saying after it's come in, you can't be asked for rent in advance. If it's in there, they obviously don't know about these changes, so that that's something to maybe query. And if they're quite evasive to questions, asking him more information, they're not willing to give you that, probably something to think about. And in terms of our service, like I said, routine, you can always drop in, you can phone us, etc., to just ask general questions. But if you want some advice, use our contact form, put all the detail in there. We can sometimes actually give you advice by email if we have all the information in that contact form, if that's more suitable for you. And then we'll offer you appointments if that's needed. They're flexible in terms of time, whether it's virtual or in person. And we just sit down with you and try and understand, what your needs are, what your situation is, anything you've tried so far. And then if we can help you, there and then by giving some suggestions, we will. Likely though, we'll have a proper research and think about your situation and come back to you with some kind of detailed advice. and then you'll have something kind of actionable to try and do in terms of any options to resolve your problem, basically. And we may provide with access to resources, whether it's ours or an external organisations that you can use as well. For example, like template letters that I mentioned before. But yeah, that's what you can expect.
Amazing. And I think that's the kind of main takeaway from this call. And, thank you so much for your time, both of you. I guess it's kind of fun. There are so many resources available, right? Not just during Housing Week, but all year as well. Just not within UCL, but also the Students' Union, University of London, but also all those kind of external organisations like Shelter, Citizens' Rights, you mentioned. That brings us to a close, and we're slightly over time, so apologies for that. And apologies if we haven't been able to answer your question. As we kind of just mentioned, there's a plethora of resources available, including more upcoming specifically detailed webinars rather than this kind of general one. But thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Farhat and Tim, for your time, and we look forward to really seeing you soon at the next event. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.